Oops. Welcome to another episode of You Left Shit Out. I'm your host, Compton J. Sorry for the late start. For some reason, it was taking forever for Rockfin to get the notification that I went live. So I was waiting for that. Have a very interesting so everybody knows about what's happening with the Russia Ukraine crisis, conflict, war, whichever term you want to use. It's very, front of mind for everybody. Of course, because the war propaganda on corporate media, of course, which is, you know, uh, anyways, because of that, and just seeing, I woke up this morning seeing a lot of bunch of tweets centered around this topic. So I'm like, let me see what I can do to for this episode to cover this. And um so I was looking and found a couple of comrades who was covering this story, and both of them who I um both of them who talk about this topic not just because it's now. They like these are the types of topics that both of these two cover, Lee Camp and Danny Haiphong. So I wanted to bring both of their perspectives and kind of talk with the audience about what is what are leftists thinking about what's happening here. And I'm gonna net the I don't know why I like this. I know it looks kind of funny that my head is cut off, but what about it this way? Anyway, I'm gonna let the comments kind of build up as we go through some of the information before I put some of that up. So let's first. Oh, actually, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Let me go in here first. Actually, he says I have to do something really quick. Um. Anyway, so we're gonna put up Lee Kemp's. We're gonna go through his stream, just snippets to see. Hang on a second. That's Danny. Okay, here goes Lee. To see, just to hear some of his perspective, so we can get this conversation jump started. Let's do that. I think it's. Oh, well, I'm not even gonna give an estimate of the time, but I know it's not like double digit minutes. So let's see what it is.
More than check out that interview with Ben Norton. But so I'm trying to of all the points there are to make around this, what's going on right now in Ukraine, I'm trying to decide what are the most important that are kind of the most ignored, because larger issues and some of the stuff, about the oil pipeline, et cetera. Hopefully a lot of people have already been learning that. But here's what I think is perhaps one of the most redacted angle for Americans. I think Russians probably have a pretty good grasp of this. But Ukraine in general was basically considered part, as part of the Soviet Union, right? So you have this massive country, or whatever you want to call it, union, that it is part of. Then when the Soviet Union falls in 91 and the U.S.
I'm sorry. I should have set this up a lot better. This is Lee Camp giving a background, sort of a historical context for those that may not know. Because, of course, corporate media is only going to give you one angle. They're not going to give you context. They're not going to give you the whole story. So that's what he's doing here. So some of you, what is he talking about? He's giving sort of a context, because what's happening in Russia and Ukraine didn't just happen the last couple of weeks. So there's a historical context to this that as leftists we should be wanting to understand, and that's something I want to understand. So it is about maybe 5 or 6 minutes, but we're gonna stop and start to talk about different parts. So let's listen to the first part.
U.S. puts, our guy in Moscow in there, Yeltsin. The U.S. begins the work of trying to kind of pull away any former Soviet bloc areas and kind of balkanize Russia, to slowly break up Russia so that it's never a threat to us. But then, as we know, Russia has become fairly formidable again, and it pushes back. And Ukraine is not one people. Ukraine is a lot of different people. Some of them, particularly many of those in the Donbass region, which is what the area that Putin has just declared independent, consider themselves more Russian than Ukrainian. And many of them speak Russian as their main language, and they don't consider themselves to be Ukrainian over Russian. And right now,
that is the part that I was not aware of. Now, a lot of you might be in the comments like, what the fuck? Where have you been, CJ? That particular part about this section of Ukraine where the people identify as Russian. I was not aware of that part, and I think is an interesting. It adds to the layers of complexities to this.
So we look at this, and the way the mainstream media propaganda has dealt with it is this all happened last week or this week. Oh my goodness, Putin decided to invade Ukraine. Ugh. And it's like, actually, what's been going on has been going on since at least 2014, obviously in smaller ways even before that. In 2014, U.S.-backed coup, U.S. helps create a coup in Ukraine that is basically a Nazi-linked right-wing coup to take over Ukraine and put in a U.S.-friendly government. So we still have a U.S.-friendly government, even if Zelensky is a little less U.S. lover, maybe slightly, than the previous president. But so we created this coup, put in Nazi-linked people. We funded and armed Nazis. I've done segments on that before, so I'm not going to get into that right now. On that border in that region, the Donbass region, which has millions of people in it. But so now that there's been fighting going on since. We're talking 8 years of fighting
that was not discussed in the corporate media at all. And I think, just real quick, I think it's important to highlight that this is like literally a Nazi government, and the Russians lost more than 20 million people in World War II to the Nazis and fought hardest, arguably, against the Nazis of all of the Allied powers. And now, thanks to the United States, there are actual Nazis again at their border.
With some of them have swastikas on their helmets. This is not
right.
Now, I'm not going to say I didn't know that. I haven't heard it described that way, where Russians fought the most Nazis. Let me go back and get the correct quote from her.
And fought hardest, arguably.
Okay, that she did kind of put in there, arguably.
Real quick, I think it's important to highlight that this is like literally a Nazi government, and the Russians lost more than 20 million people in World War II to the Nazis and fought hardest, arguably, against the Nazis of all of the Allied powers. And now, thanks to the United States, there are actual Nazis again at their border.
With some of them have swastikas on their helmets. This is not
right. No, I'm not like saying Nazi as in like, oh, they're right wingers. No, like actual Nazis. And so I think it's really important to highlight this, that World War II would not have been won were it not for Russia. And now we are with the United States.
That's the part. I got ahead of myself because I did listen to this before, that without Russia, World War II would not have been won. I'm curious when that stuck out, and I was curious to find out perspectives on that when I first listened to this this audio. And I do recommend, again, the reason I picked these two is because I do like to look at different perspectives. These are two I do like to look at or listen to. So I highly recommend go follow Lee Camp if you're not already following him, and of course, when I get to Danny Haiphong and his new channel, go follow Danny. So let's get back to the notes, and let me see if anybody is here. Let's see. Here we go. That's accurate. Soviets lost more people in World War II than any other ally. Absolutely. Thank you for that information. let's see. I think for every 10 Nazi, the triple CP killed 8 of them. Dude, the U.S. is arming and funding Nazis. That is absolutely true, and I think most of us here, I think we've talked about that. I know at least on Twitter we talk about that all the time. So I know that is a thing. Here goes one. Without the Soviets, the war would have been lost. Period. So another perspective. Okay, so that is absolutely what I need to do. You're absolutely right. I need to study it more. I do study history, but I'm studying particular parts of history, and it's not this. I study a lot more of right now. I'm studying the slavery industrial complex. So that's what I'm studying right now. I do study history. It's just not this particular one, or not American history as much. So yeah, but you're right. We all do, and this is not something to run from. Somebody say, "Hey, read up on something." I mean, if they're saying snarky, of course, but we all need to read more, study more. We're living in a reality where we have to seek out the truth, and you can only do that by reading and studying. As simple as that. So, thank you for the tip, and you're absolutely right. Okay, so let's get to back to this breakdown here. It's only another minute or so because when she comes in, it's not too long before it's over. So let's listen another couple minutes or so.
United States is pushing Nazis towards the Russian border.
Along with NATO. I'm not going to get into the NATO thing right now because I'll do that more in that interview. But so yes, you're absolutely right. And so this fighting has gone on in the Donbass region for 8 years. The number of there's been a supposed ceasefire since not since 2014, but for several years now. But the ceasefire is violated constantly. The average shelling per day was over 200 violations of the ceasefire.
It's not really a ceasefire.
Yeah, not really a ceasefire. And then recently, it's gotten into the over like 1,000 a day of violating the ceasefire. So Russia has basically been pushed through this and the NATO and the sending Javelin missiles and all this shit the U.S. has been.
You can't use your bullets and your ammunition with the ceasefire, right? You got to use the bullets so you can order more bullets. A better, bigger, badder military budget. Let's finishing up here. Let's listen a little more.
Has been doing on their border, keep in mind, it's on their border to basically eventually do something. It's like they in many ways they've been pushed to do this by the U.S. and others. But
I'm interested in finding out, does anybody else have that perspective? Like, he's going to give a synopsis in the end, but if you were in Russia's situation in a historical context, I'm not saying understanding in the last 2 weeks, where you have this, NATO, I'm going to bring up the map too, where you have a NATO map, when it's signed, and then you look at the NATO map now, there's clearly a difference. And if you were in Russia's position, what would you be doing? What would you think? And I'm not asking you to think of it. I'm not going to frame the context. So whatever context you believe that is, these are all imperialists. What I'm asking is not to find a right or wrong. What I like to discuss about, especially foreign policy, because when we're discussing foreign policy, is the thing about war, everybody that's involved has dirty hands. So you get what I'm saying? Like, you're really not you're really talking about just imperialists fighting with each other. So I mean, that's really the situation. But what I'm trying to discuss is just the realities of the situation in understanding context. Not to say that means Russia is warranted. that's not what I'm saying. And I think one or two of them say. I think one of them says that in the video. I forget which one says that. So that's not what I'm saying. Is that I like to understand all the information so I can understand the context, right? Um, it's like, understanding like it's like this. A person gets up, go to a store, robs a store, beats them up, blah blah blah, right? I want to know what is behind that story. And that's how I'm looking at this. So yeah, that person went in and did something wrong. That person is, but I need to find out what made him, pushed him, motivated him, whatever word you want to say in this example, to do that. That's just, that's kind of the way I think. I don't start from that point of, oh, let's start here. I'm wondering what would make a person do that, and I want to know what's this particular person's story behind this. That's not to say, oh, he grew up hard. Oh, he's being oppressed. That means it forgives him. It doesn't mean that. It's just an explanation, a context. That's all this is. So let's listen. Because it's a kind of a, I don't know if he means it to be humorous, but he gives like an example or an analogy at the end for people to try to understand the perspective, or Americans to understand in particular. So let's listen and for him to finish up here.
I want to read you just to give you a little more idea of this. And I don't claim to be an expert on this. A lot of this I'm just learning, but these are a lot of important points that are left out of the mainstream media intentionally because they don't want you to know this side of it. So this is an interview that it was on Popular Resistance, great outlet.
Yeah, like
and it's an interview with one of the refugees, tens of thousands, roughly 70,000 already. Refugees have left the Donbass region to Russia. And when asked, so a reporter for one of these alternative outlets got on the bus and said, how many of you are Russian citizens, meaning you have Russian passports? 50% raised their hands. Many of them are Russians.
Right.
So it's
like not just that they feel Russian, they are actually considered Russian citizens.
Yeah. So then the interviewer talks to one older man, and he says to him, what would you, so this is a refugee trying to get out of the Donbass region, but they all want to go home. They don't want to leave their homes forever. They want to go back into that region, but they want it to be part of Russia or at the very least stable, no longer being shelled by Ukrainian Nazi forces. So the older man named Oleg says, I want Russia to just take us in. I was born and grew up in Komsomolsk. I don't know how to pronounce that. We didn't even know where the border was. And I find this part really interesting. We didn't even know where the border was with Russia. It didn't matter. I served in the Russian army at the time. And then he goes on to say, we were one.
So that's just an anecdotal story of how the people in this particular region that he's speaking about are Russian, feel Russian, and some are Russian. And he's just giving an example anecdotally with this particular report in a newspaper.
It means 8 years of war. Since 2014, the U.S.-backed coup. All of our plans in the future have been destroyed. Everyone's plans. People are just worn out. They have no money, no job.
Okay, so this is the same person describing the conditions there. This Russian, I believe. So let's go back.
And now it's starting all over again.
I'm sorry. Right there.
And then things started getting worse and worse. Do you understand? And now, what do we have now? It's been 8 years. He means 8 years of war since 2014, the U.S.-backed coup. All of our plans in the future have been destroyed. Everyone's plans. People are just worn out. They have no money, no job. And now it's starting all over again, meaning similar to the coup in 2014. In other words, everything blowing up all over again, and you don't know where. Well, that's where I cut off the quote. But you don't know where to go is basically what he says. But you get the point that these borders are fucking, these are imperial powers, the U.S., Russia, etc., that have instituted these borders, and the people are like, yeah, these borders don't mean anything to us. That's my family's on the other side of it. It reminds me of the 1855 Berlin Conference, where a bunch of white nations got together, white oligarchs got together and decided, here are
entire nation of Russia, even though it promised that it wouldn't. So these are
She makes a very good point, and I think everybody. Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't introduce who he's talking to. It's Eleanor Goldfield. She's friend of the network. She's been on a couple of people's shows on this network. I can't remember who. It might have been Sabrina may have been. Yeah, Sabrina is one of them. So that's who he's having a conversation with. But she makes a point here. I may get to it. But I do want to get to Danny's, because Danny's, I think, may be the more controversial for some of us that are listening here. So if you haven't heard Danny's stream, let's take this one down. I'm going to come back to this so we can hear that analogy he gives. But let's take this one down, because Danny gives a lot more opinion. So this was more given more of a historical context, a quick version, very brief version of a historical context. So, or some not historical context, but some historical items that is missing from the story of this Ukraine-Russia conflict. So his wasn't as opinionated. It was opinion, but it wasn't as opinionated. Whereas Danny's is more opinion, and he is asked to give a Marxist analysis. So an analysis of what's going on from a Marxist perspective is what I believe it was actually in his note in the comments when he began. But I believe that's the way he was going to go anyway. So let me share what that is. Yes, go Phil. Richard Medhurst, he's also a friend of the show. He's been on the JB show a couple of times, and I think back when RJ was on, if I don't know, or maybe that interview was together. But yes, Richard has been on the network. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm sharing the different one. All right, so let's share now Danny's here. His is titled "Escalation in Ukraine as Russia comes to aid of Donetsk," and those words I can't say, but Luhansk. I think I said it the right way. But anyway, every time I try to say those words, that's what I get. Anyway, this go follow Danny. It's the left lens. Go follow Danny. Danny Haiphong clarifies his position on the crisis of Ukraine. So that's what the video is going to be about. So this is his position, like I said. I think I already kind of prefaced everybody with that. But let's listen in. We're going to stop and start here to discuss a lot more during this part here. He just wanted to put something brief up before his conversation later today. He's going to shout it out. So let's listen to the first part of this section here.
Hello, everyone. It's Danny Haiphong here. I am with you just for a brief moment. I have a work appointment at 3 p.m. Sorry about that. So it looks like we're live on YouTube. So yeah, I will be here until about 2:30, 2:45 p.m. But I had to speak on developments that are ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. They've intensified and they've escalated, that's for sure. But it seems like with every escalation, there is another degree of historical memory that is forgotten, which influences how these moves are perceived. Hello, Lewis. Hello. So I will be with you for 30 to 45 minutes. Of course, like the stream. Please do subscribe.
We're not listening to 30 or 45 minutes of the stream. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Subscribe to the channel if you are new here and have not done so yet. And also, please do support my work at patreon.com/Danny Haiphong. I'm actually at 414 subscribers. One more, 415, would be incredible before the end of the month. So I really appreciate it.
And for those that don't know Danny Haiphong, he's from the Black Agenda Report. That's where I first learned about who Danny Haiphong was. Way before FHL, when we were formerly known as Fred Hampton Leftists. So
that's how I keep doing the work that I'm doing. Anyway, I do have to get to this because I do not want to waste too much time. So please do watch from the beginning. If you catch this late, I will be here until about 2:30, 2:45 p.m. And so things have escalated in regards to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the Ukraine crisis, whatever we want to call it. But I think we do need to have cool heads here. If we consider ourselves truly anti-imperialist, if we consider ourselves truly leftist revolutionaries, people.
This is the reason why I wanted to in particular look at some of the sections of history, is because if we are leftists, if we are revolutionaries, what context should we be looking at things? We're just this particular one is just happens to be about this Ukraine Russia, but I'm always looking at it from that perspective. And I'm getting that I'm learning to be that way, and I know now I'm starting to notice this from Nick. He's always saying to be intellectually consistent. So as leftists, that's something we should always, in my opinion, be striving for. So when he mentions that in the beginning, I was like, that really piqued my interest to hear him give what he believes is that perspective. So let's listen.
People who are interested in peace.
I'm gonna start that sentence over where he's talking about here, so we can hear it.
But I think we do need to have cool heads here. If we consider ourselves truly anti-imperialist, if we consider ourselves truly leftist revolutionaries, people who are interested in peace, then we have to have cool heads and we have to give a more thorough analysis. So somebody just asked if I can give a Marxist analysis of this invasion, so to speak. And so here's my take. Now, the United States instigated this entire crisis and has been instigating it for 8 years, beginning with its deep involvement in the coup. That is what is really at stake here. Let me lift the microphone a little bit. That is what we must first discuss. We must first discuss the United States instigated this crisis. The United States did everything it could to push Russia into intervening further. And Russia spent 8 years not intervening on a conflict and crisis on its own borders with regard to Russian-speaking populations. And now there's a lot of debate about this, right? Because Crimea was so-called annexed but voted in by referendum into the Russian Federation right after the coup in Ukraine in 2014. Then you also had these republics, Lugansk and Donetsk, which also voted by referendum to join. But due to the Minsk Accords, there were certain guidelines drawn.
Oh, pause here just to talk about this one. Russian isn't an imperialist power like America. Apples and oranges. If that's your perspective, but that's not at all what I was suggesting. Of course, the U.S. is the imperialist power of the world. Everybody knows that. But that doesn't make Russia not imperialist. And saying that a less imperialist power is actually an apple versus an orange, like they're both imperialist. Maybe a small apple, maybe that's what you mean. But gotcha. All right, so let's get back to this here.
Drawn, but none of these guidelines were followed by the Ukrainian coup government and by the United States, because the United States continued to militarize Ukraine, continue to support the coup government, continue to support a government that has violated the rights of the people in its eastern regions for so long. 80% of all deaths, we have to remember this, 80% of all people killed in this conflict, tens of thousands, 80% of them are in non-government controlled areas in the east, aka the Donbass region, the Russian-speaking populations there. So we have to please have a cool head, because there's so many people now who are saying, I was wrong, Russia invaded. I was wrong, Russia invaded. And that's not the position we need to be taking. We do have to take sides here. We cannot say, well, Russia's just as bad as the United States. Russia is pulling a US move here, because that's just not true. The context tells us an exactly different story. The context says that the United States has been expanding NATO along Russia's border for more than 3 decades. The United States has been seeking to admit Ukraine, despite all of its comments, Biden administration saying, well, we respect the self-determination of Ukraine to choose. The United States literally chose the government that Ukraine has right now. And of course, people will say, oh, well, there's a 2019 parliamentary election. But the election came 5 years after a coup, which fundamentally altered the character of the government in a way that made Ukraine a US vassal state. Just look at the way that Zelensky has behaved here. Zelensky at first was saying, oh, well, we need to cool tensions. The United States needs to stop this. And then immediately after he did that, he was shunned by the United States and pressured to the point where now he's saying, oh, I'm thinking about joining NATO. And I'm thinking about, and he has already cut ties with Russia.
That is something I did notice even before I heard this from Danny, is that just keeping up with the story. In the beginning, he did have a different posture. He did have he was speaking differently in the beginning. Like, this is all being overblown. And now he's speaking in a different tone. And of course, you have to ask yourself why. We all know that they're more of a puppet government. They're a U.S. puppet government there in the UK, in the Ukraine. So I'm curious to know what your perspective is on all of this. I'm hearing that the Ukraine military has been effectively defeated. That is something I do have to check. So if anything has broken while I've been on the stream, please update me on that. I don't know if that's an update or just something that you're hearing. Russia is an imperialist power attacking a right wing regime in Ukraine. That can be true also, and that is true in my opinion, actually. Yes, and this is, I mean, war is a racket here. Only the people lose. That is true. Russia isn't. Oh, I think I read that one. I'm sorry, I read that one already. Let's go down to the newer comments. Okay. This is Alex again. Check out Russell Bentley for on the ground coverage in Ukraine. I have watched a couple of his videos, but this was like last week. But that is a great suggestion. If those who don't know, he is a good source. So this is not the first time I've heard that from somebody. So thank you for that. Zelensky hanging out on Juan's G's couch. Heard. Let's see, they're talking here. Let's see this one. OPEC uses the United States currency and call it the petrodollar in order to make transactions when it deals with energy. With Europe and Germany in particular getting Russia oil through Ukraine. This is for a lot of people don't know about the pipeline, the Germany to Russia pipeline that you're referring to, but please Google this. This is something all of leftists we have to learn more, and this is something this is why I wanted to do this stream. Just so for those that anyway, I won't call them out and describe them. So let's listen, or let's take this comment here. Danny Haiphong is weak when it comes to divulging the unelected immune hierarchy of Roman control. I'm not sure. I refuse to choose sides on this. NATO and Putin are both tyrants. NATO and Putin are both tyrants. So what do you think of that? Danny says we need to choose sides as leftists. I'm sure maybe he didn't say we need. If he said need, or maybe he said should, so I'll say both. We should choose sides. And Chip, I'm assuming you're also a leftist, Chip, because most everybody here. Oh, actually, we do have a considerable amount of conservatives that listen to us also. I refuse to choose sides on this. NATO and Putin are both tyrants. That is a great point. I'm going to start that because I think I'm going to bring that back up later. Historical materialism is lost on most people. Let's see. Let's get some more. I see you, Alex, but let's try to get some other comments in here. All right. So here we go. Imperialism is a policy or ideology of extending rule over people and other countries for extending political and economic access, power, and control, often through empowering hard power, also soft power. So, right. So they both basically. I think you're pointing out that they both can be imperialist countries. Yes, I think we all know that. So let's listen to a little more of. Hang on 1 second. Let me add this in here. CJ, also Eugene. Oh, he's given another person that we can check out. So I don't want to mess up, but I'll try per year. Per year, is that how you say it? Eugene per year. I hope I'm saying it right. So there. Sorry. So let's listen to a little more of Danny Haiphong's perspective on this.
This is the situation that is developing here. And it all points back to U.S. imperialism. And in a moment of crisis,
I think we all, even if we disagree on some of the things that Lee has said or Danny has said, I think we all can agree that part, that it kind of all roads lead back to U.S. imperialism.
Crisis where Russia has been compelled by force in a lot of ways to intervene. Now it's so convenient, right? From the beginning of this crisis last month into this month, a lot of leftists were doing this, but really now it's across the US population, the West, primed for war, primed for aggression with Russia, seeing this only through the lens of the Ukraine puppet government's eyes, only through the understanding of this crisis through the United States, the State Department, through NATO. They're just parroting this idea that Russia is just bombing the hell out of Ukraine. And that is not what is happening. And I was very troubled by.
So when he said bombing, it made me think back. I was watching corporate media on this, just trying to get their angle, and it was sadly predictable. But just to see how they propagandize people, and one of the ways is they were showing, they show a checklist of what Russia's doing. They have so many tanks, they have these amount of this and this artillery, like the number. It's like, how come you don't have those numbers for what we're doing? That was just a question that came up to me, because I never see a list like that they put on the news of what we did to that country. We dropped so and so many bombs. We killed this amount of, you know what I mean? Like, I never see that a reflection on ourselves for what we did. So that was just something I wanted to bring up, because it was something that came back to my memory when he said bombs.
By reports, right, about how Russia was supposedly bombing Kiev. Well, Russia is now intervening at the request of the breakaway republics to protect those populations. And where do you think that these paramilitary groups, where do you think that these groups that are fighting, the military included, are getting their weapons? This is the unfortunate reality of war. And I would be very surprised if Russia hurt civilians, if Russia targets civilians. It's saying it's not going to do that. To do so would be political suicide. And we have to take a position here that, one, calls for a peaceful resolution to the crisis, because I am not of the idea that further escalations is in the interest of anyone. However, or at least in the interest of Russia and peace-loving people, it certainly is helping U.S. profiteers, war profiteers. But Russia has felt compelled to do this, right? And it's an inevitable consequence of the saber rattling that has been going on. Tens of millions of dollars interfering in Ukrainian politics. The U.S., we saw Victoria Nuland, John McCain passing out cookies and sandwiches to neo-Nazis, right? That
I remember that.
was the 2014 coup, which people can't seem to remember anymore. And if we don't remember history, then we're not bound to repeat it. We are bound to be irrelevant in its development. We won't be a force of history if we don't remember it. So all along, for 8 years, the United States has been backing a coup government that has been arming, funding, training, along with the CIA, not only neo-Nazis, but far-right, other paramilitary groups, and the Ukrainian military, armed with millions upon millions, hundreds of millions worth of U.S. military hardware, preparing the way for NATO admission, right? This is the reality of the situation. And why is it so hard for people to come out on the side of peace? Peace is not just all parties put down your weapons. That is part of it. That needs to happen. But it's also about understanding the balance of forces, to the person who said a Marxist analysis. Well, a Marxist analysis of this would be understanding the balance of forces here. Russia's position has been marginalized, ignored, disrespected, not only in word, but in deed. US imperialism, NATO, they have created a situation that requires a response.
Do you believe that the United States has instigated a response? Like Danny clearly believes that he's articulating here. And this is why I think I'm going to go back to the analogy of Lee Kent, because that analogy kind of sums up, like, fits right here. So let me switch back, because it goes with the question. It goes with the question that I'm asking. This person says Danny's 100% right. This person says yes to the question. So, but to sum it up, to kind of sum it up, let me switch now back to Lee Kemp, and you'll hear his analogy. I queued it up to just so you can hear that part. So let's hear it, and you can, when you answer this question.
No.
And I just want to conclude with an analogy that is not a perfect analogy. I will readily admit that, but I'm trying to come up with something that would be kind of similar. This isn't too far off from if Russia created a war pact, a military pact with nations around the U.S. So like Mexico, Canada, both joined the Russian military pact. Cuba, other countries nearby join this Russian military pact, and then they start moving, bases and missiles closer to the border, like the Mexican-U.S. border. And then they declare that, Texas declares independence from the United States, and the Russian military pact and, the Russian allies in Mexico then help create a Russian-backed coup to put in Russian favorable government in Texas. And then the U.S. was like, yeah, so how long should we sit here before we do something? I mean, it has a lot of similarities to it. Like that analogy is not too far off from like.
So that is the analogy. Like if he readily admits it's not a 1-for-1 analogy, but it's close. If America, the United States, was in the same position, what would they be doing? So I have a couple of items here starred. I want to put on the screen a couple of comments, and I want to put your comments up here. So between Danny and Isa or Isha, the only people that Katie yet ever had anyone respond to Carnation Revolution, I feel gaslit. Okay, so then here, yes, there is a whole lot of prancing knights of Malta and on all sides of the border of all of this conflict. Precisely the same knights of Malta we need to bring it to justice. Go here. Why is this going off here? Oh, email. I agree with Danny. The U.S. installed a right-wing regime in Ukraine and has been sending military aid. That is a provocation. That is, and I like how you sum it up. I mean, this is basically what Danny is saying. Is that there's you're sending military gear, weaponry to the border nation of Russia. So one imperialist knowing what another imperialist is doing. Let's keep that clear. These are imperialists. So one imperialist, Russia, seeing the tactics of an imperialist because they're one themselves. Something to think about here. So let's go. There's one more here. Dumbass asks for help in denazification. Check out any new comments here. Please give your take. So now that I'm looking back on it, I wish I would have done my due diligence to get a person who calls themselves a leftist, but it has a different perspective on this, and that's what I should have played, both sides. But I will actually go to some tweets now. Let's do that. Let's go to my page because let's see what leftists on Twitter, for example, think. A lot of the audience is from Twitter, so let's see. We'll go to Nick first, and then we'll go to Ryan. So this is Nick Cruz Twitter page, and let's see, because I know he's been tweeting a lot about this today. So let's look at Nick's Twitter stream here. Get a idea of what leftists think on this topic, or what are they talking about on this topic here. So let's look at this one that he's saying. Putin is, let's make it a little bit bigger for everybody here. For me, really. I think that's good. All right, so Putin is waging hot war, and if you are anti-war, you should be against that. But economic warfare is warfare. Why are people silent about the insane Biden administration starving millions of Afghans and sponsoring multiple genocides? If you voted for Biden, take a seat. Yeah, like basically you don't have any moral high ground here. Like sit down. I get it, Nick. And I think he goes on. Let's see what he goes on to say here. You guys, let me click on it so it can be big for everybody to see. You guys seriously think Putin's kill count is anywhere near Biden's? So that is Nick's perspective on that particular topic, but he has more. So let's go to another tweet here. Oops. Oh, actually, is that mine? Let's see if he put my tweet there. Sorry, everybody. I have although I have my cast off, my finger still kind of twitches and it hits the other right side of the mouse, and that's what happened there. My apologies. Oh, It has nothing to do with this, but this is the tweet. Most Black people are unaware that the Black Panthers are a Marxist-Leninist organization. That's not a coincidence in this capitalist system. So that is absolutely true. Yeah. So let's now go down to some of his other comments. This is Aaron Mate. Russian Ukraine comes down to whether you're a Western chauvinist or not. Chauvinists presume that U.S. can expand a hostile NATO to Russia's border, back a 2014 coup, flood Ukraine with weapons and use its people as cannon fodder, and choose Ukraine's far right over Minsk peace accord. Let's see what else. How does he further go on? Yes. Let's click on it to make it bigger for everybody. In my opinion, Putin snapped. He had other options. His pipelines fuel Europe. That's leverage. He could have given a speech to U.S. people. If forced to have happened, he could have just gone into Damascus and to protect its own civilians. But ignoring and excusing the U.S. role is ahistorical and chauvinism. So it sounds like he's just trying to say, everybody, let's be honest with the conversation here. Russia's no saint, and Russia is also imperialist, but let's be honest. This one is from friend of the show, Thea. I believe that's how you say it. War has really horrible consequences for everyone involved, including our planet. No one wins. Oh, I'm sorry. Great tweet, but let's get to the ones specifically about the conflict here. This one from Anaya. Ukraine's sovereignty ended in 2014 when the U.S. overthrew its democratically elected leader in an illegal coup and installed a puppet government. At least 13,000 people have died in fighting since then in a war fueled by U.S. weapons and neo-Nazi militias. This war did not begin tonight. So, another leftist perspective here. Oh, so I can just go to. So Nick has them all on his. So great. Or is this Nick? No, this is Revolutionary Blackout Network. What am I? Excuse me. Biden supporters don't care about the Ukraine people. They care about their corrupt corporate party maintaining power at all costs. This is sick. And I'm going to read that quoted tweet, but I mean, look at my stream and make sure everything looks good here. Everything does look good. Perfect. But let's look at the quoted tweet that he's reading from. In a way, Putin did us a favor. Historically, every president running for re-election during a war has won. Clearly, this person has been ratioed because there's 3,000 quoted tweets and 200 and some odd likes. So, with that big disparity, these are clearly bad QTs. But yeah, somebody actually sent this out. This person has 14.6 thousand followers. In a way, Putin did us a favor. People starving, going to war. That's a favor. Historically, every president running for re-election during a war has won. Now, maybe that's why the escalation, that's why the instigation by the United States in the last couple of months around this topic. They saw the numbers from Joe Biden. And when the president's doing bad in every category, it's time to go to war. Somebody's doing shit wrong, and the United States got to go and help them, right? Let's finish up and listen to Dan. I'm sorry. Let me read a couple of more tweets and then we'll finish up with Danny. I don't know if this is bad. Let's see. If Trump gets back in office, we'll have the casualties from the war and the genocide of LGBTQIA people. I'm not fucking kidding. This is Trump gets back in office. There's people out there like this, people. Like I don't even have words. I don't have words. All right, so let's get back to the stream, and we're gonna end up here getting to this. It's a couple of other points that Danny makes. Sorry, I really do need to get some glasses, so I'm always sitting close to the screen. I have some, but the prescription has obviously changed. I believe. Okay, so let's get back to Danny's right here. Let's listen some more to Danny's take.
How much can Russia take? The same will go for China, right? The same will go for all of the countries that are under the gun of U.S. imperialism. How much can be taken before there are steps that are just over the line? And the way that the U.S. has instigated this over the last several months, further militarizing the situation, worsening the so-called civil war between the coup government Ukraine in its eastern regions in Donbass, right? That is critical to understand. That is important. We need to understand this from the situation of what are the balance of forces. Russia has demanded peace from the beginning, and they've been called demands, but really it was a request, a proposal. Negotiate in good faith, and the United States did not do so, right? Ever since this crisis began, Joe Biden said he was meeting with Putin. Nothing doing in the way of progress there. Hold on one second, guys.
His dog acts up here, so let me just fast forward a little bit.
Right, Russia and Europe are so deeply connected.
A little bit too much right there.
Was going to invade, continue to send weapons, continue to worsen the situation in eastern Ukraine. The only solution was to call the bluff, and that's what Russia did. Russia has called the United States as bluff, and it's an unpopular take, but it is.
So
really,
let's rewind that a little more, so you can get the full take
on
here.
his program. I'm sure this will come up. So,
he talks about some scheduling right here.
So anyway, no progress in the way of real peaceful negotiations. Sorry about that. My dog is like getting frustrated and whatnot. I kind of rushed this together. I will be talking more about this at 5 p.m. Okay, with 6 p.m. Eastern time with Graham Elwood on his program. I'm sure this will come up. So, in any event, the position that we need to have, and thank you so much for coming. Like the stream, subscribe to the stream, and please do support my work at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. For the 20 minutes that I have here, I want to focus on where we need to be and what we need to do, how we need to think about this. Russia is not the enemy here. Russia, from the beginning, has proposed a peaceful resolution, which included the demilitarization of hostilities, the ceasing of NATO expansion, very basic requests. And the United States and its allies, NATO allies, categorically rejected those requests. And so the only other solution, as the US continued to say Russia was going to invade, continue to send weapons, continue to worsen the situation in eastern Ukraine, the only solution was to call the bluff. And that's what Russia did. Russia has called the United States as bluff. And it's an unpopular take, but it is really, I think, the only possible solution. Some people will say, oh, there was leverage. Russia and its energy influence, right? Russia and Europe are so deeply connected. The United States has been showing a willingness to really sabotage Europe, Russia, and the United States itself based on this ongoing aggression. The pressuring of Nord Stream 2 to hold back on certification, the pressuring of Germany to do that is part of this. And I think it was almost like a last straw because as the US continues to talk about sanctions, 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 right? Sanctions, 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 more painful sanctions, as
Sorry, I
Nancy
was
Pelosi
really,
put it,
really paying attention. Let me get
to
to some
pressure
comments
even
here.
just a temporary halt in the certification process for Nord Stream 2 is a direct indication that the United States is seeing war primarily and principally as the goal here. And that should be what people are concerned about. That's what people in the United States, in the West, that's what they should be concerned about. Not with what Russia is doing now, because what Russia is doing now is honestly a response to so much escalation, aggression that's decades in the making, from the soft power aid to the most far right elements in Ukraine to the attempted financial strangulation of Russia based on these baseless allegations of annexation of Crimea all the way into now, where now there's talks of even trying to cut off Russia from the SWIFT system and all of this economic warfare. The military and economic warfare put together has placed Russia in a position where it feels like it needs to respond and it needs to gain some stability. So that's really the position that we need to have, okay? We need to demand the abolition of NATO, as people are saying in the chat. We need to demand a peaceful resolution that prefaces it is the United States, which is the aggressor here, is the United States, which is pressuring Russia, pressuring governments in the region to fight each other, right? Ukraine has been militarized not to protect Ukraine, but to move Ukraine out of Russia's orbit, to move Ukraine away from partnership with Russia. That was all that the coup in Ukraine was about. So somebody says Danny needs a mod. Sorry about that, guys.
I'm going to stop it right there because he covered so much there and so many great comments. I'm going to go back to and put some of them up and maybe comment on a few. Let's go back to this one here. Neoliberalism requires total tyranny in order to survive. Was the same in Chile. Total tyranny always provokes revolution. We will be seeing it in the West as the WEF programs roll out here too. I bet Congress stack portfolio doing well, large defense stocks shares. Let's see here. This is true. Rest of the world's going along is far more frightening than our own BS. Why go along? That's true. Because the rest of the world, other countries know the US is BSing and you're still going along with it. It's like a bully. Like if you go somewhere and there's a bully there and he's bullying and doing bully shit, making up shit. Oh, you hit me, and you go, yeah, he hit you. When you know it's not true. Um. So yeah, so let's read a couple more comments here. There were some good comments I wanted to touch upon. Now that the United States is moving towards renewable energy, you can expect any country that has lithium will be served a dose of democracy by the United States. That's what we call it. We call our war. We're just spreading democracy. So ridiculous. Let's see here. Same Nazis of Ukraine coup were also seen in Hong Kong also. I hadn't heard his take on it. I don't know what it would be. The foundation of the U.S. credibility is its preemptive military support superiority. That is true. Before something happened. That is a great point. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so let's see. Any last comments here? Bring on the democracy bombs. Yes, I shall agree. She will agree. I think that's a different topic there. Somebody's talking about J-Tor. Oh my God, I can't believe that. That is just so funny. American government is extremely pathetic. I just wanted to get as many of your comments on about this, because when it comes to foreign policy, now we have the International Leftist Coalition. They do that is our I don't know the right word, our main, our only international focused stream. And this is a great chance to bring up the we're going to be doing the International Summit is finally here, and it's the International Solidarity Summit. Just FYI, that might change depending on it may change. So let me go and find a flyer. I'll put it up on here for everybody to check out. Oh, here it goes. All right, let me share this so you can check out. So we had the General Strike Summit, which is basically a labor summit in November of 2021. And now what is that, 5 months, 6 months later, we will be doing an international solidarity summit. And share screen. Is this it? Yeah, here we go. Here we go. This is the sort of like the save the date flyer, just to let you know what month it is. We have not selected the specific date. We're still trying to figure out some scheduling issues just with amongst us. So that's the reason why we haven't per se put out a date. But International Solidarity Summit is the hashtag. Start to use it. Revolutionary Blackout Network presents International Solidarity Summit, 3-day live stream event, April 2022. So if you see this graphic, make sure you retweet it. Make sure you let people know this is the next summit that we will, as a network, be working on. So make sure you wait for that. Also, shout out to Sabrina is doing her women's summit this weekend. It's 7 to 9 Eastern, 7 Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, 7 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday this weekend. I believe that's the 26th and 27th. Yeah, 26th and 27th. Make sure you check that out for Sabrina. Support. So I think I'm gonna cut it there. I know we didn't finish the Danny live stream, but please go support Danny, whether you agree with his take or not. You want to be in conversation and discussion with people who are anti-imperialist, people who are anti-racist. And his whole I would say the thing he does well, or the thing he does a lot or works on a lot, is about imperialism. A lot of his work is on imperialism, different aspects of it. So check out Danny Haiphong. Let me see if Uh, my bad. I didn't even know I clicked the back button. But anyway, let me put this Danny Haiphong thing back up here first. And then I'm going to go back to that flyer because I want to shoot. I went to click the back button on this browser so we can see the name of his stream. So the left lens is Danny's channel, so that's where you can go subscribe to him. You can see more of his content here. Okay, the left lens for Danny, and everybody knows Lee Camp Redacted, so you can go visit Redacted there. And now let's switch back to the International Solidarity Summit. There we go. International Solidarity Summit coming to you. RBN is bringing that to you in April 2022. So little more than about what? That's about, before we get to the month, that's about 6 or 7 weeks, maybe 5 or 6 weeks before we get to the month of April. So I have come to the end of this stream. This is just literally scratching the surface of this topic, but I thought we need to begin to talk about this with a historical perspective, from a leftist perspective, leftists talking to other leftists about this particular topic. They're imperialists, and we're against both imperialists. That doesn't mean we should not talk about what imperialists are doing, their strategies, that type of thing. That's actually very important as a movement, that we understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, the real reasons behind it, and talking about that. So check out Lee Camp, check out Danny Haiphong. Shout out to both of you. Thank you for coming on the General Strike Summit. Hopefully both of you will be on the International Solidarity Summit. I'll do another stream where I'll ask, like, what do you want to see at the International Solidarity Summit? We want to have this, of course, have a lot more international flavor, a lot more international people on it from other countries speaking on some of the same topics that we want. So that's what we want this particular summit to be. But think about like what you want to hear at this summit, and then maybe in the next stream, which is next week. Again, I'm only doing this stream now Monday through Thursday, no longer on Friday. I wouldn't be able to do it tomorrow anyway. Tomorrow is the beginning of my wife's birthday weekend, so we're going to visit family or something. So I wouldn't be able to do it tomorrow anyway. But anyway, Monday through Thursday, you left shit out. Save the date. International Solidarity Summit is coming in a few months, or a month and a half or so. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this stream. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit to 15,000 by April 1st. So April 1st, hopefully we hit 15,000. That 15,000, then we'll be able to see our International Solidarity Summit. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for those on Rockfin. Oh, actually, let me see if there's any Rockfin comments that I just want to shout out really quick here. I do see a few. Let's go over here. I don't see. Okay, so John Powers, thank you for your comment here. Look at how the United States freaked out over USSR putting missiles in Cuba. That is a great point. I know it's at the end, but that is a great point. So look at how the United States freaked out, the Cuba Missile Crisis. That's a great point to bring up when we're talking about this. Look how they freaked out. And look at their response to that. So great point. Let's see. John makes some other comments, but let's see if anybody else makes some comments here. This one is Leonard Trust Fund, trust with 2 S's. It says, Russia doesn't have biolabs at our border. I was trying to see what that meant. But anyway, thank you for those comments on Rockfin. Thank you for those watching on Rockfin. Hopefully you're enjoying the content. I did see that we did gain a couple of subscribers, maybe 100 or so. So hopefully you're enjoying the content there. Hopefully you're enjoying the content on Twitter. I try to make sure these streams are posted on Twitter also. And of course, YouTube, the bread and butter. Make sure you follow. Make sure you like. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the comments. Thank you for joining me for this stream on the Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine crisis conflict, given the perspectives of Lee Camp and Danny Haiphong. I'm going to be signing off for today and actually for the weekend. Later today at 6 p.m., we have the round table. So make sure you tune in. We're going to be talking about this also, along with some other topics. So make sure you tune into the round table in about a little less than an hour and 20 minutes. I'm signing off. I'm Compton J. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next week.
San Lorenzo at Tres Zapotes. For white people, they're not comfortable for them to talk about the possibility that Africans were here before the Europeans. So what do you do with the heads in Mexico that you find at San Lorenzo, at Tres Zapotes? What do you do with those? All right? You ignore them. What do you do with Columbus's diary that says the Africans know a way to the west, but it goes around the doldrums, we would never survive? What do you do with that? You ignore it. What do you do with Balboa's diary that says we came upon this African village in the isthmus? How did these Africans get here? What do you do with that? You ignore it. Why? To preserve the myth that the Europeans were here first. What do you do with all of this written literature and history that says that Abubakar II of Mali sent 200 ships to the west? One came back and said they were afraid that the others disappeared. And then to have Balboa find this village that looks just like Mali, where he was, what do you do with this information? You ignore it. You ignore it. Why? To preserve the myth of white superiority. That's what our whole educational process is devoted to. What do you do with this whole history? This is a written history, my dear. Written. I'm not talking about hearsay. I'm not talking about a griot said this. I'm not talking about something handed down from one generation to the other through voice. I'm talking about written history of the Egyptians. What do you do with this? You ignore it.